Elise de Clorance. After you were crowned queen, you were envious of your people's worth and ability, harboring evil intentions. You committed a monstrous crime. You have been sentenced to death by fire. Dr. Song Ji-hyun awakens from a nightmare where she was set ablaze. Only this nightmare was reality, a reality in a far distant past and a different life. She's on flight to Germany until turbulence hits, and the captain announces to everyone that the plane has taken damage and can no longer sustain flight. Everyone is in fear as they must descend for an emergency landing. The engine explodes and the people scream in panic as the plane descends. The screams intensify with people begging someone to help, but no one can come for them on this crashing plane. And all Dr. Song can think of is, am I gonna die here? This time, I wanted to be sure I lived a life with no regrets. No, more than anything, I plan to save so many more. Dr. Song was incredibly skilled, taking on surgeries and performing feats that others simply could not reach. Known by her peers as the kind-hearted surgeon queen, and also having doctors' handwriting so bad no one else could make it out. But her skill set should never be taken lightly, as she's always in the know about the latest medical technology and has never failed a single surgery. Even when getting introduced to newer, experienced doctors, they praise in awe at meeting the surgeon queen. She really enjoys sweets too, as she doesn't indulge in any vices like drinking or smoking. We only have one life, and this time, in this life, she wanted to live earnestly and face everything with sincerity. After dinner with her friends, Dr. Song was greeted by a young girl who was ecstatic to meet her. She thanked the doctor for saving her mother during a pancreatic surgery that everyone said was impossible to do. As the young girl began taking her leave, she mentioned her mother had told her and her father she loved them dearly, and the words love lit up Dr. Song's eyes in a sad way, because she's never said those words or had anyone say them to her. Because in her past life, the one she loved didn't love her back. Even worse, the man she loved announced in front of the people that as punishment for her crimes as Elise de Clorance, the evil empress of Britia, she was to receive death by burning. But now, leading her second life as Song Ji-hyun, this time things will be different. After dinner, she begins packing for her trip to Germany, and when she spots a book on medical terminology, she gets nostalgic, remembering the times she was bullied for being an orphan. She didn't get the chance to experience love by a parent in this life, but she wasn't going to let the loneliness get her down. She had brought misery to everyone in her first life, but to atone for all the sins she committed as Elise de Clorance, she became a doctor and saved as many lives as she could, and brought happiness to as many people as she could. She was proud of herself and happy for having chosen to live this way. But sometimes she wondered if her family was here, would they be happy to see her this way? Despite the wicked person she was, her family was always kind to her. Her father, her mother, and her two older brothers. She still missed them dearly, even in this new life. Awakening from the plane crash, it seems she survived, but her eyes stared in horror at the lifeless passengers. Despite this, she steeled her resolve and went to her medical supplies. She then hears a boy cry out over his passed out mother and runs over to check on them, promising to save his mother from dying. She successfully patches up the mother, but then she hears a man aching in pain and sees a metal pipe lodged inside of him. She doesn't have a blade handy, so she cleanses some broken glass nearby and surgically repairs the man's abdomen. She then sees the sight of rescue helicopters arriving. Looks like everyone is going to survive, except she isn't, as the blood begins to pour out from below her waist, and we see a trail following her every step. It's no good. She's not gonna make it. Song falls out of the plane, wishing she could have seen her family one more time. Oh man, it looks like Palace has escaped his cage again. Wait, what's he doing here? This familiar place. A maid then comes in to tell the girl that, as of today, she's no longer confined to her room. As the girl stands silent, the maid asks, "Lady Elise?" And the girl stood in shock, seeing her face in the mirror. She was once again Elise de Clorance? Elise then asks the maid Mary if her family is at the dinner table right now, and they are. She doesn't know why this happened, but her mother, her father, her brothers Chris and Len, she was in tears over how desperately she missed them. After telling her family how much she loved and missed them, they stared at her in visible shock. Her mother scolded the father for punishing her too severely. Her brother Chris consoled her, telling Elise that a lady awaiting her betrothal shouldn't cry in front of others. Upon hearing about her engagement, she had something to say, but her father cuts her off, telling her that her engagement to Crown Prince Linden de Romanoff will be formally announced at the Emperor's birthday celebration. However, Her eldest brother Len protests Elise even being a good match for the prince, realizing it's insolent of him to question the decision that their emperor has made, but he truly opposes their betrothal. Elise smiles because hearing Len's sharp tongue is nostalgic, but she agrees with his statement. People, illness. Then after the Kusef War, an epidemic spreads eastward with an estimated fatality of 70,000 people. Elise sighs. However, she cheers up when her maid Mary brings in some dessert. Mary gets a little flustered because she's never heard Lady Elise thank her, causing Elise to remember the wicked villainess that she was before, who got she and her Prince Linden ascended the throne. She became the worst possible empress, until 10 years later, she was burned at Elise examines it, and with a glimmering smile, tells Mary it'll be alright as long as they rinse the wound in water. And after that, she needs to wrap it in clean cloth in a way that'll keep the wound closed, demonstrating all the knowledge she gained during her life as a doctor. Mary thanked her with tears in her eyes, grateful to see her mistress care so much about her. And this reminded Elise of the young girl whose mother she saved. But to do that, she knows tomorrow is going to be a battle. She presents herself in front of Emperor Minchester, who is happy to see her again, with his first guard, Bent, standing beside him. He now knows as Diabetes, leaving her with the final words saying she should become a good and praiseworthy empress. The emperor nervously sips tea, hoping not to give away she's somehow lived a whole nother life. Sir Bent, however, thinks she's just nervous with the emperor's birthday coming around. She grabs her dress because then looks away. Elise remembers once being in love with his brusqueness as well. But when she tried to serve him, he would only dismiss her, saying he only married her under his father's orders, nothing more. However, she had never given up. She had been determined to get him to love her. Now looking back, she felt stupid for trying to force things. Linden apologizes for his late arrival, as his discussion with the Ministry of Finance over the Kusef campaign budget ran long. Elise expressed some concern about the expedition, so the king wanted to know her thoughts. From her past life, she knows the campaign will fail, a failure resulting in a war where her brother Chris loses his life. She wonders if she should tell them because she doesn't want to look suspicious. But with the idea of Chris dying again, shaking her to her core, she explains there is a worst case scenario where the kingdom of Moncel from the east will join in on the enemy's side. Elise breaks down a really long explanation about how their empire will get ambushed by some guerrilla warfare. And the king is shocked that not only does Elise understand battle tactics, but feels exhausted because lately he tires easily and feels ill. She learns that he's got all the symptoms. Tired even after long periods of sleep, feeling thirsty no matter how much he drinks. The urge to urinate often wakes him up. She's now certain the disease he died from was diabetes. The emperor questions how she knows so much about what ails him, and she answers that she once read it in a medical text, that these sickly conditions were caused by high concentration of sugar in the blood. The emperor takes her input and will bring it to his personal doctor. Viscount issue has been solved. She now has to deal with Linden. She announces to everyone at the table she would like to annul her engagement to Prince Linden. Her father gets up, confused at what is happening, but the emperor has him hold it, as he wants to know what has changed, since Elise was the one who wished more than anything to be engaged to his son. She then responds that being the crowned princess, she would become the first lady of the empire and an important ruler. She feels too inexperienced and unfit for the position, ready to accept any punishment they would deal her. But the king has her raise her head and for her to tell him the real reason. So she answers that she wants to be a doctor, showing a determined look in her eyes. The king felt her desire, especially thinking when she demonstrated her knowledge of the medical text from earlier. So he decides to make a wager with her. If she passes the exams and becomes a doctor, proving her work as a doctor is more valuable than her existence as the empress, then she can choose whatever path she desires. But if she can't prove herself, then she must put on, something that no one was expecting. Afterwards, the emperor has Elise and Linden take a stroll through the garden, since it's been so long since they've seen each other. As they walk, Linden asks why she took on such a gambit, as being a doctor is highly specialized and even with a noble rank, she'd be given no special treatment during the exams. However, Elise is aware and refuses to give up. Linden stares at her, shining, with her saying she's ready to give it her all to save as many lives as possible. And this even surprises and flusters, especially for always causing him trouble. ever since they were small. She had forced him into an engagement he never wanted, but he simply answered, "Who said that I didn't want this engagement?" Which is something she wasn't expecting to hear staring at him face to face. Behavior. But the Emperor tells him there's no need to apologize. She's matured so wonderfully, it's even surprised him. We turn back to Elise, still apologizing for everything, saying she won't get in his way anymore, and she knows that he hates her. However, he just looks at the petal on her head, taking it off and walking away without a word. She could tell he was angry, but she knew this time walking a different path would be a happy one because he's the one she loves the most. The next day, Elise is assigned to the Teresa Hospital owned by her family. She'll be working under a doctor named Graham, the youngest instructor who's also considered a genie recognized as the Duke's daughter, but instead as a student who was recommended by a viscount. Her father asks why she's hiding the fact that she's from their family, but she knows if they learn she's from the Clorance family, she'll be given special treatment. Chris isn't too happy with his younger sister being assigned to a relief hospital for the poor, so he'll be sneaking in from time to see how she is, but she tells both Chris and her father not to worry. Just like you shouldn't worry about missing my videos if you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Here, at My Shoujo Weekly, you'll find plenty of other villainous anime like this one. If that's something you like, I can for sure handle. You don't need a medical degree to subscribe to my channel. Eventually, she arrives at Teresa Hospital, knowing she must earn her license as quickly as possible and win this wager against the Emperor. We hear Graham de Fallon, annoyed for having to work with the young Rose. If she's even 1 minute late for their 10 o'clock appointment, he plans to toss her out. She arrives right on time, and Graham immediately judges her as she has the appearance of a typical noblewoman. Graham then begins evaluating her resume. She's not old enough to have graduated from the academy, so how has she been studying medicine? She explains she's self-taught, which makes Graham chuckle over hearing such a ridiculous statement, just furthering his annoyment because if this weren't a request from Viscount Kate, he'd throw her out right now. He questions her on the purpose of healing arts and what she would do if a patient lost their life while undergoing treatment. She confidently answers, being a doctor is about treating and curing patients. Then, with her eyes closed solemnly, she tells them she'd carve their death into her heart. This gets Dr. Graham's eyes to widen. To him, it's as if she's a doctor who's faced patients' deaths many times. He then takes her to work with patients who have severe illnesses and no family left. This is a ward where patients who are beyond the primary hospital's aid stay in. Elise then asks if she'll be treating their underlying conditions or alleviating their symptoms through conservative treatments, surprising Dr. Graham again because she's asking the perfect questions. He wonders if it's just coincidence. He leaves her to her own devices and thinks it might be cruel to place her there, but if she's going to quit anyway, it's better to make her realize it sooner, thinking she'll only last a few days at most. The people in the ward stare in awe at Elise because she looks just like a little princess. She begins cleaning the ward as better hygiene can reduce overall mortality. So she continues to clean and mop up the place. The maids even start to help as no one has ever cleaned this ward before. But afterwards, we see it sparkling clean. We then take notice of a man groaning in pain. He had suffered injury from falling off of a roof he was fixing. Elise decides to lay him over for examination and notices he's been lying down so long he's developed bed sores. Elise tells the maids to take him to the treatment room because if he's left like this, his back may get infected and that would lead to blood poisoning. She then asks for a disinfectant solution, anesthetic, and a scalpel, and the maids are shocked to hear Elise is going to perform surgery. Elise suits up, knowing Dr. Graham will probably scold her later, but she can't stand aside while a patient's condition is worsening. With the skill set from her life as Dr. Song Ji-hyun, the surgery queen, she removes the patient's dead skin with ease and completes a successful surgery. The next day, everyone cheers at the recovery the injured man has made. He tears up a little because he was just so happy at how he was treated. Whenever he showed any anxiety, Miss Rose would always reassure him it was gonna be alright. She tells him she didn't do anything special. That's just what any doctor should do. The men then all begin fighting over who Elise is going to treat next, so she tries to calm them down because she's going to treat them all. Over at the Emperor's palace, Sir Bent is getting pissed because Viscount Ven has no idea how to treat the Emperor's worsening conditions. Prince Linden mentions Elise's words about the symptoms of diabetes. This leaves Ven perplexed. There was a small presentation given in another nation with fewer than 20 people who know about this disease, so they send Ven off to research more detail. Afterwards, the Emperor asks his son how the Kusef campaign is going. Linden reports that what Elise had mentioned before was right, and that a third enemy nation Moncel seemed to be preparing for an ambush against them, which was verified by their intelligence bureau. The Emperor then sighs with relief, knowing Elise has saved their empire. The head doctor is pissed at Graham because he left Rose to independent study when she was referred by Viscount Kate. He then gets ordered to go watch after her and heads to the ward begrudgingly. However, he's surprised to find it sparkling, his mind blown, wondering if he came to the wrong room. He tries to wake Rose up, but the happy patients tell Graham not to because she's been working so hard she hasn't slept. Even the maids think of her as so admirable. She cleaned, she examined, and her treatments were to perfection. However, upon hearing the word treatment, Elise began to wake up to a pretty angry Dr. Graham, now knowing she was in for a scolding. Dr. Graham checked the first patient, surprised to find on his back the buildup of fluid and pus gone, with the opening of the wound completely clean. Elise reported the severe bed sores the patient had developed, and with the risk of infection, she excised the necrotic tissue. With complete skepticism, Graham asked which doctors helped her, but she confirms it was a solo job. This makes him laugh, causing her to sadden a little at his lack of belief. However, the patient confirms she did his operation on her own. So, Dr. Graham decides to test Rose. He asks the name of this patient's illness. She answers bacterial pneumonia, given the viscous phlegm and increasing inflammation that was found during the exam. And upon hearing her answer, he simply has her returned to her ward. Graham sat at his desk, pondering everything. He deliberately had Rose examine patients with difficult cases, but somehow she answered correctly every time, like a veteran doctor. He kept wondering how this young girl who had never attended the academy came off as so experienced. Is she perhaps a genius? The patients she looked after were all abandoned by the hospital, but were now happy and getting healthier by the day. Graham had wondered if he had been in her place, would he have been able to do what she did? No. Is there any doctor in the world who could do what she did? He actually smiled, looking at the joy she brought. He then invites her to a little creek. He's ready to admit defeat. He apologizes to Rose for allowing his own prejudices to see her as a nuisance. He completely judged her appearance. He holds out his hand for her to shake and blushes, while letting her know this is to seal their vow as teacher and student. And with that, the two vow to work together to save lives. Back in his office, Viscount Ben confirms the symptoms Emperor Minchester mentioned, confirming the illness to 100% be diabetes. This left him to ponder, however, which doctor would have mentioned this. He had asked many of the brightest from the Imperial Cross Hospital, but not a single one of them had referenced His Majesty's illness. Knowing whoever mentioned the information to the Emperor must be brilliant, Ben gets frustrated wondering who it is. Back in the Emperor's quarters, Prince Linden delivers the news that Ben is preparing his father's treatment. The Emperor is grateful to Elise. Now, it's not just the country she's saved, but also his life as well. He feels if Lady Elise were to become Empress, Britia Empire would surely be secured under her leadership. But is conflicted, because if she has the talent for medicine, would it be better for her to be a doctor? Emperor Minchester then commands his son to go inspect the Pierre territory, where Teresa Hospital is. That way, he can ascertain how Elise is doing with his own eyes. Dr. Graham introduces Rose to his apprentice doctors. They're astonished to see such a young noblewoman here working at the hospital. With Graham having to go to a meeting, he leaves Hans in charge of showing her around. But Hans feels nervous about her, misjudging Rose as a girl who might faint at the sight of blood. Hans shows her around until a nurse comes to them, saying there's a patient in need. It's a man with chest pains who is having trouble breathing. Hans orders a nurse to bring an electric cardiac defibrillator and Dr. Graham. However, Elise knows this is the wrong call. There's no time to run tests on his heart. He'll die before Graham even arrives. Elise gloves up and gets a stethoscope. Examining the patient, she notices the sound of breathing on his left side growing weaker. His jugular vein was overly swollen with blood. This is definitely tension pneumothorax. Too much air is escaping into his chest and putting pressure on the heart, causing the man to go into shock. Elise then has the assistants bring disinfectant solution and an injection needle. After wiping down the man's chest, she pierces it with the needle to alleviate the pent-up air pressure. And with that, the man is finally able to breathe, leaving Hans shocked out of his mind over what he just saw. Graham makes it in to hear Elise's explanation. Air was escaping the patient's thoracic cavity, putting pressure on his lungs and heart, so she used the needle to release the trapped air. And with that, Graham understood exactly the treatment she was going for. He congratulated Rose, as tension pneumothorax could have led to death if it was not treated immediately. Hans was only surprised even more because he knew Dr. Graham was famous for never complimenting anyone. The rest of the doctors behind Graham were impressed as well, excited to pick Rose's brain, and this only confirmed to Graham that she is a true genius. Everyone in the hospital began speaking in hushed whispers about Rose, the young noblewoman who looks like she was raised in a beautiful, happy, sheltered life, but was somehow able to perform difficult procedures that saved the lives of others. But regardless, Elise couldn't ignore a patient right in front of her. Even Hans is boasting about it to his peers, blushing when his friend mentions he's smitten over Rose and her talents. He even suggests Hans ask her out to the festival. Hans agrees to the idea since, with the festival only happening once a year, it wouldn't seem weird for him to take her out. On second thought, he doesn't feel he's a good match for her sparkling aura at all, but who wouldn't fall for her after watching her skill and resolve? After hearing Rose's report on dealing with a patient who dislocated their arm, he thinks of her not only as a genius in medical arts, but someone who's mastered them. I mean, it's as if she was reincarnated with the skills of a god-tier doctor from another world. Even Graham catches himself in a daze, distracted from his thoughts of Rose. They hear cheers outside, and Dr. Graham remembers today is the day of the festival. It only happens once a year, so it's something everyone in town goes to enjoy. He tells Rose she should enjoy it instead of working any overtime, and she responds by thanking him and giving him a warm smile, which causes Graham to blush and look away. A nurse then suddenly barges in to tell them a patient was just admitted with a serious injury. Before them is a patient named Randall with a serious bullet wound. Graham tells Randall's friend saving him will be difficult, since the bullet passed through his spleen. He then apologizes because there's nothing he can do to save him. Completely distraught, Randall's friend then pulls out the crest of the Imperial family, demanding any method to be used to save his friend. However, Graham only looks down with remorse, because there is no method in the entire empire for treating a pierced spleen. As Graham begins to decline again, Elise interjects, saying they will take on the task. The blonde man stares in shock seeing her here, because it's secretly Prince Linden in disguise. While visiting the town where the festival was going on, Linden's guard Randall noticed Linden seemed unrested lately. However, it's not just lately. Linden has felt unrested for the last 15 years, since the death of his mother. He used his imperial magic to disguise himself. They toured the festival to get a good inspection of the town. They then headed down a dark alleyway, as it was the fastest method to reach Teresa Hospital, until a robber came threatening them to hand over their belongings. The robber went in for a strike, but Randall disarmed him with a single stroke. However, Randall wasn't prepared for the gun that the assailant had in case. Linden is shocked to hear Elise is so adamant to handle Randall's injury, since she just came to the hospital. Graham tells her it isn't possible with how severe the wound is, but again, she's confident, telling him they'll just remove his spleen. Then it came to Graham. There'd be no need to stop the bleeding within the spleen if they just remove it and tie off the blood vessels. They can stop the hemorrhaging. Such a simple idea, yet no one has ever done it before. To Graham, the idea is revolutionary. Graham asks her who should perform this, since it's beyond even his current skills. But both him and Linden are flabbergasted to hear Rose, the newbie apprentice, desire to take on a surgery this difficult. But she's confident that she'll save Randall. They need a third assistant, however, and with everyone else busy, Linden offers to help. As Linden watches Elise perform the surgery, he remembered when his father first announced his engagement to her. For the longest time, he thought that he didn't care about who he was engaged to, but seeing how she is now, could he be falling for her? The surgery ended in success. Linden, under the alias of Ron, thanked Elise for saving Randall. He then began to get up to take his leave, but Elise noticed he was pale, so she wanted to check on his temperature, but he pulled away, getting flustered, making excuses for why he couldn't get checked. He eventually ended up bringing Randall home to recover. Back at the hospital, Elise handed over her report from the surgery, and Graham was surprised at how bad her handwriting was. Viscount Ben got a hold of the report, excited to explain the miraculous, never-before-seen splenectomy. However, the head doctor from Teresa Hospital in front of him disregards it as a lie, saying the surgery simply isn't possible. But Viscount Ben claps back, because this very surgery was done at the hospital the head doctor is from, leaving him to believe it must have been Graham who performed it. One of the nurses comes in, as Graham has been called for by the director to explain Randall's surgery, so he takes Elise with him as they head to the director's office. While sifting through books, Linden falls and Len luckily is there to catch him. Len suggests that if the prince is unwell, he should go visit the hospital, but when the prince responds there's no need to because it's just mild dizziness, he remembers Elise saying it could be a symptom of something else. When Graham and Elise enter the director's office, she notices Viscount Ven. However, when the director dismisses her as a new assistant, Ven thinks nothing more than the girl looks familiar. Not good for Elise. Ven has been performing her medical exams since she was little, but he thinks it's not possible for the wicked Villainess to ever become a doctor's apprentice, and just chalks up the resemblance to Elise as uncanny. Ven then asks Graham how he performed the surgery. However, he of course gives all the credit to Rose. The director grows tired of hearing such a fabricated story, since she's in this world completely new to medicine. But she confirms the claims, saying she's always wanted to become a doctor. She studied the basis of modern medicine in this era, and her excuse for how she knew the surgery would work was that she had always been searching for better treatment methods. But of course, she can't tell them she was a god-level doctor in a previous life. The director asks if she came up with the splenectomy procedure all on her own. She did, and she even explains exactly what happened and how to do the surgery. The director still can't believe what he's hearing. This is preposterous. However, Viscount Ven is more than ecstatic, even offering her to come work with him at the Imperial Cross Hospital. After all, he just wants to see her techniques in person. The Imperial Cross Hospital is the Empire's greatest medical institution. However, to work there, she'll need to pass a medical examination, which Emperor Minchester is having Ven bump up the difficulty this year. The director thinks there's no way she'd pass. However, Graham believes she will. He thinks of Rose as a true genius who possesses greater abilities than any doctor he's ever met. He's even willing to humble himself and say that she's better than him. So with that and Rose's confidence, she's able to get letters of recommendation from the three of them to take the medical exams. While divining the hospital, Elise thinks back to when her engagement was announced at the Emperor's birthday. Back then, this Villainess believed a happy future awaited her, but the person she loved never loved her in return. She had never seen Linden smile once. But this time, her announcement won't happen since she's chosen a different path. Ron comes to visit, and the two lock eyes, staring silently for a bit. He at first says he didn't come for any reason and tries to walk off, but Elise stops him knowing he came back for the treatment she suggested. In her office, she asks probing questions to determine what ails him. He at first thinks he's wasting his time, since the doctor at the Imperial Cross couldn't even determine his ailment. She then suddenly grabs his hand to check his temperature, and that's certainly making his face red hot. She notices his hand is a little cold, so she decides to check his neck next, not making the situation of his heart any better. He wonders if she's like this with her other patients. She then determines that he has subacute thyroiditis. The thyroid is where thyroid hormone, which regulates our body's fuel, is created. When the gland is inflamed, it'll produce less of the temperature regulating hormone. But it's easily solvable by just taking some medicine. But even with him taking it, she'll need him to return in 3 days, and for him to visit regularly over the next 2 months. That way she can check his condition and adjust dosages if needed. So they periodically meet for Ron's treatments, until their final visit, where she tells him he's all good now, and he almost looks disappointed that he's done being sick, since he won't be seeing her anymore. However, while working in his office, feeling better than ever, he looks out his window and heads to the hospital back in his Ron disguise to find excuses to hang around Elise. After all, he can't tell her directly that he just wanted to see her face. He helps carry her water bucket and offers to help clean the hospital. However, he's never cleaned before in his life, so she offers to teach him. They get close, scrubbing together. When they finish, Elise thanks him for all the help, and she catches his heart again. He's a little saddened to hear her call him Ron, but is now just discovering how beautiful her smile is. That night, back in Linden's office, Len asks where he's been going lately, leaving the mountain of accumulated work behind. But all Linden wants to know is what Elise likes, as he wants to show her his gratitude. So Len explains she likes strawberry cake, mango pudding, banana tarts, hates milk, but that's not what the prince was looking for at all. He wants to give her something worth gifting to a lady, but I thought treats were pretty good. Linden quickly figures out this conversation is going nowhere, since Len is someone who's always serious about working, until Lin suggests jewels, as his sister has always liked dazzly, gaudy things. But even so, for some reason, how she currently is, Linden can't imagine her liking jewels the same way. He tries presenting a jewel to her, but she says no thank you. He tries telling her it's a gift for saving Randall the other day. However, she can't accept it as she only did what a doctor should do. But Ron still feels he cannot rest easy until he's repaid his debt to her. But Elise feels the medical fee was enough. However, Lynn was right. She wants strawberry cake, except her family won't let her eat it too often. Then, Linden mentions she likes mango pudding, banana tarts, and that she hates milk. But she wonders how he knows that. Linden just smiles, telling her from now on, she'll let her eat as much as she wants. From the bottom of his heart, he wants to bring joy to this woman he's fallen for. At the palace, the Emperor asks the director about how Rose fares at the hospital, and the director confirms beyond a shadow of a doubt she's a genius, as if she were born to become a doctor. The director then takes his leave. Sir Bent expresses that no matter what, Elise must become the Empress and serve the Empire. He was the one who suggested the medical exam's difficulty be raised to make it hard for her to pass. He also suggests the Emperor announce Elise's engagement to Linden at his party, even though the Emperor had promised to wait for their wager to finish. But Bent has an important plan to enact, as we see Elise cheerfully working at the Teresa Hospital. The day to celebrate Emperor Minchester's birthday has come, with the people cheering "Long live the Romanoffs" and "Long live Britia." At the palace, Elise de Clorance arrives with her family to witness the huge gathering of those looking to honor the magnanimous emperor. As the Clorance family walks through, the people comment on Elise's beauty and splendor, except for one woman who isn't too happy. The festivities commence and Elise finds herself all alone amongst the crowd, even though the rest of her family seems to fit in just fine. But the only thing that's bothering her is that she wants to go home to study, with the physician's exam date approaching soon. Unfortunately for her though, attending the Emperor's birthday celebration is a duty for noble family members. She then becomes alerted that he might be here too. Mikhail. In her first life, he was her only friend. Even though her husband Linden would anger her with his lack of acknowledgement, Mikhail would always comfort her. Clashes with other countries aren't the only conflict in the Empire. There's the imperial family's faction, which is led by her father, Duke Clorance, and the opposing nobles faction, which supports the third prince, led by the House of Child. In a pretentious tone, we hear Ji-hyun the Child say, "It's been some time, hasn't it, Lady Clorance?" Elise remembers now that since their families are from opposing factions, the two had never gotten along, always having fought like cats and dogs. But the biggest reason they clashed being they both had passionate feelings for Crown Prince Linden. Thinking back on it though, there was really no good reason for the two of them to fight. Ji-hyun gets in Elise's face, asking why she's in a daze. So Elise makes an excuse that she was just remembering a few things from the past, because of course, she can't explain she was both reincarnated and isekai with all her memories from a previous timeline. Ji-hyun wonders if Elise was thinking about the time she had put a frog in her desk, or maybe at last year's feast, when Elise threw Ji-hyun's shoes into a pond, or maybe when Elise accidentally spilled tea all over Ji-hyun because she saw a bug. Wait, why did the Emperor and Bent choose her to be Empress again? Now remembering just how horrible she was to Ji-hyun, Elise apologized with a deep sense of remorse. But the sight of Elise bowing really threw Ji-hyun off, making her wonder where this was coming from or if it was some kind of prank. However, Elise with her head lowered tells Ji-hyun this is no prank. She's realized how bad her behavior has been. Ji-hyun breathes a sigh and tells Elise to raise her head, even giving somewhat of an endearing look. She mentions Elise seems different somehow. They then hear one of the knights announce the arrival of Crown Prince Linden, and the people are surprised he's here on time since the prince isn't fond of celebrations. Linden looks amongst the crowd until he spots Elise, and she wonders if he's looking at her. No. In her mind, there's no way he could ever be looking in her direction. However, Ji-hyun, with hands on her heart and a face flushed, believes the prince to be staring at her. She then starts to fall over, as if just being overdramatic. But Elise checks her head and can tell she actually has a terrible fever. Elise asks Ji-hyun to lie down. However, Ji-hyun reminds her that it's a noble's duty to attend the Emperor's birthday celebration, but also she wouldn't trade her time near the prince for anything in the world. Elise knows that, unfortunately, because of Ji-hyun's political position, there's a chasm between her and the prince deeper than between Romeo and Juliet. But even with her family leading the enemy faction, Ji-hyun still cares deeply for the prince. Ji-hyun as a person is both earnest and noble, someone that Elise believes would be worthy of being crowned princess and eventually the empress. Chris suddenly appears to tell Elise she shouldn't be interacting with the daughter of the child house and takes her away, all while onlookers gawk at Elise. something that pisses Linden off. Len picks up on Linden's sudden displeasure, but he denies anything being wrong. Len keeps pressing on the matter, which makes Linden wonder if being dense runs in their family. Linden then spots Elise watching Julian get pulled away, and comes to the conclusion that Elise must be interested in dancing. However, she's actually just worried about Julian falling apart since she's sick. However, he's not the only man who wants to get close to Elise, as a few boys swarm around her for their chance to dance. Elise knows refusing without a particular reason would be considered disrespectful, so she reluctantly goes to accept one of them for a dance, but Linden comes in to stop it, and asks her to dance, stealing her right in front of them, something she wasn't expecting. As they move on the floor, Elise asks Linden why he invited her to dance since he'd never really given her much consideration before. She has no idea he was patient Ron during his previous visits, or how his feelings have changed. So when he answered it was just on a whim, in her mind, she gets disappointed because, of course, His Highness would never actually want to dance with her. All this while he's getting shy and telling her he's glad to have helped her get away from those guys. And the people stare and comment about how the two move so perfectly together. They heard that the prince's fiancée is supposed to be announced today and came to the conclusion, yes, it must be Elise. Elise remembers in the past where she had to practice feverishly to keep up with the prince's lead during dance. The first time she had danced with Linden, not being able to follow his lead was both embarrassing and frustrating to her. She would often practice so much that her feet would swell all the time. She felt it ironic that she finally used those skills today. Her mind then wanders back to the state of Julian Child, concerned for her health. Linden picks up on that she keeps looking at Julian, so he dances while slowly inching over towards Julian and her dance partner. After Julian finishes her dance, she begins to collapse and Elise catches her, scolding her for pushing herself too far even though she has a fever, telling her to go home and rest. But Julian refuses because being absent from the Emperor's birthday celebration would cause damage to her family's honor. So, Linden interjects to tell the girls to come with him, and Julian gets so excited to follow her crush. Linden leads the two to the lounge where the Imperial family normally rests, but Julian doesn't want to impose. However, Linden explains that if it's a noble's duty to attend birthday celebrations, then it's the Imperial family's duty to help them when in need. Julian takes her rest, and outside the door, Elise tells Linden she'd like to stay with Julian because she wants to look after her. Linden remarks that Elise seems to be like that with everyone, and his comment makes her a little puzzled on what he means, but he just takes off without explaining anything. Elise checks Julian's condition, and good news, she seems to be breathing more evenly. Then a woman comes in to alert them that it's time for Emperor Minchester's celebratory address. Elise remembers this older woman. She's Duchess Harbor, who's from a great noble house in the west that's blood related to the Imperial family. The Duchess tells Elise she should head to the hall, but when her legs begin aching, Elise catches on to the pain the Duchess is experiencing. As Duchess Harbor leaves, Elise suspects she could have Parkinson's disease, a disease where nerve cells begin to degenerate and cause decreased motor function throughout the body. In her past life, she remembers the Duchess losing her life when food becomes lodged in her respiratory tract. However, the time to deal with that isn't now, because Julian has awakened. Elise escorts her to the hall, commenting that it's wonderful they'll be able to make it back in time for the Emperor's address. Julian must be so resilient because of her good daily habits. Julian gets a little flushed and thanks Elise for everything, but Elise's kind heart genuinely thinks nothing of it. She was just doing all she could. Things are sure different than Elise's past life because Julian would love to get together with her for tea sometime. The people wait in anticipation as Emperor Minchester arrives, and he praises them for their incredible loyalty and all that kingly stuff. But getting to the meat of things, he has an important announcement. In regards to Linden's fiancée, he regrettably informs the people the lady they have chosen is not of age yet. And Elise stares nervously as she's in disbelief that they'd announce her engagement with Linden with her wager against the Emperor still going. The Emperor explains to the people that while there's nothing wrong with this lady not being of age yet, he does have a personal promise to them, and so the official announcement will come after Elise has come of age. The people begin to talk after hearing the sound of Elise's name. She has no idea what's going on or why the Emperor would say her name to everyone. I mean, what's the point of this in not just officially announcing their betrothal? Julian certainly looks crushed though. But with that, Emperor Minchester tells everyone to continue enjoying the festivities and takes his leave. Julian nearly faints again, but is luckily caught by Prince Mikhail, who tells her to keep his appearance quiet as he's here secretly. With a devious tone, he remarks, So, that's the girl who will become my big brother's fiance, is it? All while Elise freaks out, having PTSD over the terror she experienced in her first life, standing depressed, knowing she may suffer the same fate all over again with her engagement to Linden basically announced. As Minchester and Bent walk together, Minchester tells him to bring Elise, and feels bad for making her go through this ordeal, but he wants to answer any questions she might have. The Emperor and Elise sit across from each other, with Elise sulking. She wonders what happened to their wager, a wager that was to last until she came of age. She should still have time. Minchester confirms the wager is definitely still on, which gets her staring in surprise. But the kind Emperor wouldn't break any promises. That's why there's no formal announcement, so if Elise wins, he can still withdraw what he said. Elise is concerned for the Emperor's reputation. However, Bent assures her there's nothing to worry about. However, he doubts she'll be able to achieve proving her value as a doctor will ever exceed her value as an empress. Minchester thinks of Elise as if she's his own daughter. He respects her determination, but in truth, he wants her to marry and support Linden, which is part of the reason why he announced things this way. She wonders why the Emperor cares for her so dearly. Is it because her father is an important friend to him? Or because of how she acted the other day? However, she can only stare in shock. Emperor Minchester remarks, "This country has many outstanding doctors, doesn't it? But you are the only one who can become its empress." Elise looks saddened as the Emperor has her weigh the importance of becoming empress more than becoming a doctor. He reminds her she can be with his son like she always wanted, and they can dance all they want as gracefully as they did earlier. He pleads her to reconsider. She knows the gravity of what the king is saying, but even so, she still has no intention of ending the wager here. Pallas watches Elise as she continues to study diligently for the medical exam. Her brother Chris enters her room to check on her, and even with her best efforts, Chris thinks she's pushing herself too hard, especially knowing the birthday celebrations are still continuing tomorrow. He urges her to sleep because she'll have an early morning tomorrow. But even though she's serious about continuing, Chris is just as serious about her sleeping. The next day at the festivities, Elise gets surrounded by several nobles congratulating her on her engagement to Prince Linden, but she isn't too excited about it. She looks up to check for Julian, asking the others about her, but no one has seen Lady Child. Elise knows with Julian being in love with Linden, the announcement must have surprised her. I think that's more than surprising, knowing the two of you had just become friends. But Elise feels remorse and wants to explain things properly to Julian. We suddenly hear silverware drop to the ground, a man calling for a doctor, a woman had fallen. It's Duchess Harbour, the woman that Elise assessed to have Parkinson's disease. Elise runs over, noticing the Duchess choking with the food lodged in her throat. Elise collects herself, rationally thinking about her next move. She tries to awaken the Duchess, only to see she's fallen unconscious and exhibiting cyanosis, a bluish discoloration of the skin resulting from the inadequate oxygenation of her blood. Elise starts to perform the Heimlich maneuver, but it just isn't working, so there's only one method for her to use. Luckily, Elise always carries alcohol-based antiseptic with her at all times, usually to prevent infections. She takes a dining knife and pours the antiseptic over it. Someone shouts at Elise, asking what she's doing, but she beckons no one to interfere, so that the Duchess has a chance to survive. She points the blade, promising everyone she can save the Duchess. She plans to make an incision on the neck to secure an airway, a task that must be done within 30 seconds. She locks in and cuts. Good. She can barely see the food lodged in. She takes a straw and plants it in the Duchess's neck, now allowing her to breathe, even knocked out. Elise is relieved everything worked out. However, everyone is staring, flabbergasted. She knows there isn't any precedent of performing a tracheectomy in this world, so this is likely to become a serious matter. The knights come over to escort Elise for interrogation. She accepts, however, she wants them to also deliver a message. Because this was urgent, she didn't have the chance to move Duchess Harbour over to an operating room for this treatment. So, disinfection wasn't performed under ideal circumstances, meaning there is still risk of infection. She needs the staff at Imperial Cross Hospital to disinfect the Duchess's neck again. The knights could only react to the strange amount of knowledge leaving Elise's lips, but they accepted her request. They then escort her out, and we see Prince Mikhail was observing her the entire time. Sir Bent reports that Duchess Harbour was saved from death's door, and the king acknowledges they must once again give their thanks to Elise. For now, though, she's been placed in the Hundreds household, as they don't want to put her in a jail cell, but she needs to be placed somewhere. Bent is concerned about the outcome of this. because Elise's reputation as a doctor will certainly increase. Well, of course it would. She saved someone who is part of the imperial family, which would unfortunately for them support public opinion for her to become a doctor. Sir Bent suggests they counter this by having someone find flaw in the way Elise performed the procedure, especially using an eating utensil to cut. That way, they can confine Elise to the Hundred's house, making her unable to take the medical exams. The Emperor condones this plan and offers Bent to summon their nation's finest doctors in hopes of finding this flaw. In the Hundred's house, Chris shouts at Elise, scolding her for the brash actions she took. And even though she apologizes, Chris doesn't believe her because she cut the Duchess's neck, something that would have normally put her in prison. Chris asks her if something like this would happen again, what would she do? Well, as our Dr. Villainess, if there's a patient in front of her, she will save them. Chris is ready to scold her further, making Elise a little scared. However, Len approaches more tactfully, saying he and Chris understand she acted in a way to save the Duchess and that anyone would praise her for giving medical treatment as an act of bravery. But Chris won't stop his scolding screams, saying that saving the Duchess isn't a good enough reason to endanger herself. With Chris scolding her and Len praising her, this seems to be the opposite of how things would normally turn out for Elise. Elise continues her medical exam studies into the night, getting exhausted over all the texts she still needs to read. She eventually falls to her desk into a slumber. She dreams about a time Mikhail had something to tell her, but never got his words out, only saying for her to take care of herself as he disappeared. And we see her crying in her sleep, uttering the words, "No, please, you can't die." As we see, it was Prince Linden who tucked her in. He had heard she was taken into custody, so he came to check on her, but wonders what kind of dream she could be having to cry like this. She turns over in tears, and he thinks, "Don't cry. When I see you suffering, I don't know why, but something in my chest tightens. A pain enough to make him break his vow to never return to this tower of blood." He wipes Elise's tears and wishes for her to dream of pleasant things. But as he takes his leave, we see Mikhail deviously saying he's never seen his older brother like this. Mikhail watches her from afar, noting the interest his brother has taken in her, thinking it's time for him to go tease her a little. With Elise lost in thought, Mikhail suddenly appears to ask what she's reading. She jolts in surprise, and Prince Mikhail apologizes, especially since this is the first time they've spoken. He introduces himself as the third prince, Mikhail de Romanoff, but wonders if he should have shown himself, since he's Linden's political rival. He wonders what she'll do, if she's dumbfounded in shock. However, he's in more shock to see Elise crying, saying, "Mil, is that really you?" He wonders how she could know his nickname. She apologizes, saying not to mind her, and formally introduces herself. Mikhail doesn't understand, but when seeing Elise, he senses a sorrow within her eyes. He takes his leave, but he'll see her around, since he's also locked in here for stealing some of his father's drinks during the birthday celebration. So he's being confined to reflect on his actions. But Elise doesn't buy that he feels sorry at all. In Minchester's throne room, he has Viscount Ben and Dr. Graham give their reports, with the Emperor and Bent astonished to hear Elise's surgery to be perfection. Ben claims he was excited to see this treatment that was so dangerous. No one had been able to test it, but Elise's medical skills seem to transcend above all current medical professionals in the nation. Emperor Minchester wonders if this was just a fluke. However, Ben was only more excited to say after reading her medical report that the positioning and method of the incision was optimal and described very precisely, all while Minchester and Bent are losing it. As Viscount Ben tells the two her work needs to be published as a treatise to advance the current level of medical science. Minchester thinks Ben is off his rocker, so he asks Graham's opinion on this, only for him to confirm Elise is an absolute genius, something he'd willingly stake his reputation on. The Emperor can tell he's lost, so he orders Bent to release the girl, with Ben getting even more excited because he's been allowed to speak with her about her skill set. We see Elise continuing her studies, only for Mikhail to barge in. He's bored because he wants someone to play with, and when he picks up her complicated book, she explains she needs to pass her medical exam and become a doctor. Mikhail remarks that with her becoming a doctor, she wouldn't marry his brother, would she? And with a hint of sadness, she simply answers she has no intention of marrying Linden. So with that, Mikhail invites her for sweets, something that Elise gulps at because there's no way she can turn them down. But alas, she's too busy studying. Mikhail supposes she can't hang with him, so she bashfully tells him, okay, just for a little while. They enjoy a variety of sweets and drinks that Mikhail stole from his father. Elise scolds him, saying it isn't good for him to steal, because if he keeps doing that, he'll never be able to leave this place. He smoothly replies, "If that means living here with you, Lise, then it wouldn't be so bad." But Elise brushes this off since he says that to all the girls he speaks to. Then he laughs with embarrassment, wondering whatever does she mean? Oh man, he's a total playboy. The two then have a toast, and this brings back memories for Elise. They used to toast like this all the time in her first life, but unfortunately, she wasn't able to prevent his death. She knows with he and Linden both being princes, only one can become emperor, and that the pursuit of the throne is ultimately what will kill Mikhail. Mikhail asks her what's wrong, since she always looks sad looking at him. It's like she's experienced this all before, which gets Elise shocked hearing him say that, but he just laughs because it was a joke. He notes that she seems different, especially casting aside the position of empress to become a doctor. He asks if she hates Linden. She assures him she doesn't, then asks Mikhail about his sword skills, even knowing he's traveled to other countries to train as a warrior. Mikhail says the rumors are true and doesn't believe anyone can best him in swordsmanship. So she asks why he trained in the way of the sword, since as an imperial family member, he shouldn't need to defend himself. So he kindly answers, it's because he loves swordsmanship. This is the same for Elise in becoming a doctor. At first, she chose it to atone for the mistakes of her first life, but now she wants to spend her entire life carrying out the work of a doctor. Even knowing Emperor Minchester wants her to marry Linden and become empress, if she were forced into that path, she'd be a bird locked in a cage, unable to pursue her passions. This is why she must win her wager. After she knocks out, Mikhail carries her to bed and tucks her in. He sighs because if he was Linden, he'd treat Elise with much more care. He gives her a light kiss on the forehead and takes his leave for the night as he has to be somewhere tomorrow. The next day, Viscount Venn and Graham arrive at the Hundred's house, and Graham thinks based on the report he read, Elise's abilities must be equal to Rose's. Uh-oh, I just remembered those two don't know Elise's Rose yet. Elise awakens to hear a knock on the door, and those two are surprised to see Rose here, with Elise at a loss for words. With Dr. Graham and Viscount Venn surprised to see her, Elise apologizes for concealing her identity. Venn knew she looked just like Elise, but never imagined she was actually the same girl he'd known all along. Venn explains they arrived after clearing up the misunderstanding with the procedure that was done to Duchess Harbor. He helped to dispel that the tracheotomy was not an act of disrespect towards the imperial family, and instead claims she should celebrate her incredible achievement. But she maintains a somber look, especially seeing Dr. Graham not looking her way at all. And things would only get more awkward, because while examining a patient together, Dr. Graham seems to only speak to her with formality. She tries to tell him he can speak to her in the way he always did before. However, he declines because she is in a much higher position than him. Upon opening her report, Graham makes a disconcerting look, which makes Elise wonder if he's angry with her for concealing her identity. He sighs, putting down her report, only furthering Elise's sadness. She'd like to explain her situation to him. After all, he's the only one here at Teresa Hospital who knows she's from the Clorance family. In the office area, Hans tells Elise he's looking forward to working with her, as Dr. Graham left work this morning. The next day, Elise looks for Dr. Graham, but it seems no one has seen him at all. During lunchtime, she enjoys some sandwiches and looks out towards the other doctors. She grows sad again, unable to find Graham. She learns from Hans there's a rumor that Graham requested leave and will be absent from the hospital for a while. He remarks Graham seemed a little unusual when he had left, and that even though he learns a lot from Elise, he loses a lot of motivation without Graham there to yell at him. Now, Elise is certain this is all her fault. She decides to take matters into her own hands and gets dropped off in front of Graham's house. The nursemaid, Yodel, kindly welcomes Rose in, and inside, Elise marvels at all the medical texts Graham had read through and studied. She could tell Graham worked very hard. Yodel serves Elise tea and explains she tried calling Graham down, but he wouldn't come. He's been locked in his room for days now. Elise assures her that Graham applied for leave appropriately, so things are still fine at the hospital without him for now. This makes Yodel feel better that he's not causing trouble, but also she's excited to hear from an outsider what Graham is like at the hospital. Elise explains that everyone adores Graham. His directions are always exact, making all the apprentice doctors go to him for help first. Yodel was relieved to hear that, because growing up, Graham cried many nights, so much it was difficult to help him fall asleep, but given the way he is now, Elise really can't imagine that at all. Yodel gets up because she forgot to bring out snacks. She stumbles a bit, and even with Elise's concern, Yodel says she's fine, it's just that she's getting old. But it wasn't fine, as we hear the serving tray drop on the floor. Elise catches the woman, and when Yodel passes out, Elise calls out for Graham, who leaves his study to see his beloved maid passed out. With the carriage on the way to the hospital, Graham tries to figure out what happened to her. He asked his maid where she was hurting, and Elise picked up that she showed signs of pain in her abdomen. Elise then began to examine and notice swelling in her groin area. It's hard and won't push backwards. It's an incarcerated inguinal hernia. With the current symptoms, she tells Graham necrosis of the intestine may have already begun. If not treated immediately, it'll cause intestinal perforation and inflammation of the abdominal lining, putting her life at risk. With Yodel calling out to Graham in pain, he's determined to do the surgery with Elise's help. They begin a surgery to repair inguinal hernia and complete it successfully without any problems. Graham is a little exhausted and wants to rest a little now, so Elise offers to write up the report. Elise transcribes their operation, which included, after making an incision in the upper section of the hernia, they looked for a change in the color of the intestines and observed the blood flow. However, seeing Elise's handwriting, he stared in horror. He took the paper from her, saying he'll write it instead, seeing her terrible doctor's handwriting. While he works on the report, he asks why Elise was at his house today. She tells him she came to apologize because he seemed angry that she concealed her identity, and she was worried that he left for days because of it. Graham simply responded, "Angry?" with a quizzical tone. "Well, yes," Elise conveyed, showing the expression he made with his eyebrows drawn together, while he had concurrently sighed heavily. Oh, it all made sense now. He was just shocked at her handwriting because it's so bad it takes a long time to read, making her gasp in embarrassment. He explains he simply took time off to focus on his research, and that she was the reason he felt the push to do so. Elise always works her hardest. He recalled the hospital ward he had first assigned her to. Even within the hospital, that ward was known as one of the cruelest places. With the sight of the filthy conditions, he was certain that Elise was going to run away, but she didn't. Hiding her identity while aiming to become a doctor, studying on her own to learn medical science, he understood neither of these paths were easy, so he wanted to learn that strength from her. Elise tries to assure him what she's doing isn't so grand. However, he elaborates further that her skills are so sound. When she treated that one patient with the tension pneumothorax, the splenectomy, and even the tracheotomy she performed the other day are all things only she could have done. Graham acknowledges his shortcomings, even though he studied so hard at the academy, even having read all the medical texts over and over. Everyone says he has a talent for medicine, however, he feels no more than an average person who works his hardest. He sees Elise as someone born with talent, something that he's jealous of, and with a smile, he tells her he truly feels envy and respect towards her. Elise asks him why he decided to become a physician. He pauses slightly and closes his eyes and tells her it was because he had lost his family. 20 years ago, he had his parents, an older brother, an older sister, and also an adorable little brother. They would spend time playing together and traveling. He remembered every day with his family to be a happy one, until one day they were taken away due to illness. 150,000 people died in the Larage epidemic. His family had been infected too, and when they were on the verge of death, he wasn't even allowed to sit by their sides. With his family gone, he couldn't afford to pay for any of his maids or caretakers. The disease had stolen everything he held dear. But even being a ruined noble, the only person to hold out their hand to him was Yodel. They became like family. There was a time she had fallen ill and he had nursed her back to health. This is when he had thought to never let disease steal anything precious to him ever again. His losses and his precious remaining family gave him determination to become a doctor. After hearing his story, Elise found herself with a deep newfound respect for Graham and his moral compass. The two walked outside to the sight of the beautiful stars. However, he couldn't take his sight off the glimmering Elise, but when she noticed, he turned away. And walking in the halls on a different day, his thoughts of Elise actually made him blush, making him wonder why he feels so embarrassed. Back at the Clorance Manor, Elise sneaks her way upstairs, only to be joyously greeted by her brother Chris, who tells her she's going to be awarded the Order of the Imperial Rose due to her tracheotomy operation on Duchess Harbor. Later, Yodel wakes up to Graham sitting beside her. He blames himself for not noticing her condition sooner, but asks her to tell him whenever she's not feeling well. Hans peeks in, making Graham ask what he's standing around for. So Hans replies he's happy to be on regular routine, as he hasn't been scolded by Graham for a few days now, which had made him feel a little empty. But Graham doesn't really get what he means by that. The doctors pile in to get Graham's consultation on other matters, hours. And when Graham takes his leave, Yodel smiles, remembering a young Graham crying over his losses and mourning his family when he had nursed her when she was bedridden, bringing her a 4-leaf clover for good luck when he began studying medicine, and the late nights she would put a blanket on him to keep him warm, and when she stood beside him at his graduation, proud of the man he's become. Thunder strikes and rain falls as we see Julian riding in a carriage staring at a book containing Elise's face on it. It seems that for the first time in history of the Empire, a woman will be awarded the Order of the Imperial Rose. However, the carriage makes a sudden stop, and outside Julian runs to Elise, who is perfectly fine, just a little startled. But the driver had flown off in order to avoid hitting Elise, meaning Dr. Villainess is on the job. As the rain pours madly, Elise assesses the man to have a broken bone. Oh shoot, she doesn't have a splint, so Julian offers to use her umbrella as one. Elise is at first concerned for Julian because she'd be getting wet now, but Julian thinks nothing of it, with Elise willing to get muddy in the rain. After bringing the carriage driver Daniel back to the child house to recover, Julian says she'll make arrangements for him to visit the doctor tomorrow. Elise then sneezes, making Julian concerned for Elise's well-being. Elise tries to leave because she doesn't want to impose, but with the thunder raining heavily, Julian tells her to stay over for the night. And now after bathing, Elise never imagined staying over at the child estate, since their houses don't really get along. Julian brings over some ginger tea, which she had started drinking since that time she was sick at the Emperor's birthday celebration. The warmth and improved blood flow generally increases the body's immunity. Hearing that from Julian made Elise excited. Could it be that Julian had been studying medicine recently? Julian confirms she had been studying because she was a little jealous of Elise. It seems everyone is watching Elise, so her every move is being reported on. There are even magazines with special collections of her on them. She then congratulates Elise on receiving the Order of the Imperial Rose, and also being awarded an honorary knighthood. Right now, Elise is walking a precipitous path that no one else has managed. Where Elise walks, so many new hopes will spring amongst her footsteps. This all made Julian so jealous. She tried to copy Elise in the hopes of becoming somewhat like her. Elise knew it. Julian's heart was broken by her engagement announcement. Because the child family is a part of the nobles faction, her family and the crown prince are enemies. There would never be a chance for Julian and the crown prince to be together. Elise touches Julian's hand in order to console her. This reminds Julian that Elise has so many wonderful qualities, while she herself felt inadequate. But she stops herself to tell Elise she has a bedroom readied, and they can now both rest for the evening. The next day, Julian finds herself treating Elise. After reading 39 degrees Celsius on a thermometer, it's clear Elise has a high fever. Julian then gets a report that her brother has returned, so she has to go talk with him. In his office, Albert asks why Elise is in their household. Julian explains the situation, which relieves Albert because it would have been bad if they had actually hurt someone from the Clorance house. When he tells Julian they need to get Elise out as soon as possible, Julian responds only as soon as Elise gets better, leaving him to question if Julian is going to become friends with their house's direct political enemies. Back where Elise is staying, Dr. Kyle assesses her to, of course, have a cold, so he prescribes some medicine for Elise. However, Elise is only worried about carriage driver Daniel. The doctor tells her it's fine because of Elise's treatment. Daniel should recover in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But Elise won't take all the credit, as she gives some to Julian for holding down the splint while she tied it. The two ladies then smile at each other, which surprises the doctor, as he'd never think to see Julian being friendly with Elise. He now thinks Elise may change more than just the medical world. Julian cares for Elise, wiping off her sweat and braiding her hair. Elise is happy to receive her care and tells Julian she's very kind, and Julian makes her feel at ease from the bottom of her heart, causing Julian to gasp and blush. She's never been told she was kind before. When someone's done something wrong or something she can't accept, she's always scolded them. That's just Julian's personality. The two girls bond on how they're both stubborn and hate losing, which makes Julian remind Elise of her old self. One time, Julian was taking her leave, and Elise stepped on her dress, making her trip, and mocked Julian for being so unsightly. Or that time Elise was sprinkling pepper into Julian's tea, where upon sipping, she began coughing badly while Elise mocked her. Julian had received so much childish harassment, she really hated Elise from the bottom of her heart, making Elise saddened with a remorseful look. But Julian says it's different now, and she really respects Elise. Elsewhere, The nobles faction meets to discuss Elise de Clorance, the woman who's garnered tremendous support from the people. With her current feats, the entire empire is watching, especially after her being announced as the unofficial crown princess. As a consequence, this has made Prince Linden's approval ratings much higher, where previously the people preferred Prince Mikhail much more. And to them, if Linden ascends the throne, they know Linden will remove them. He'd never forgive them for what happened to his mother that rainy day. Mikhail, who had been silent the entire meeting, knows at least 3 who will die. His mother, his uncle, and himself as well. Back at the Child Manor, Elise and Julian enjoy sweets together. Elise then decides to empathize when Julian said she had nothing, remembering the time she was reincarnated as Song Ji-hyun, an orphan with absolutely nothing. But because she didn't have anything, she devoted everything she had to improving herself. Elise then tells her it's the people with nothing who can become the strongest. Julian warmly smiles, but pouts knowing Elise is trying to comfort her, and now she's confirming Julian has nothing. Elise gets so flustered because she didn't mean that, and she gets tea on the dress she borrowed from Julian. She promises to clean it and give it back, making Julian tease her for having to fulfill a second promise. The two laugh, and to end their time, Julian promises to do Elise's hair on the day she received the Order of the Imperial Rose. Back at Elise's home, her father shows concern after hearing she spent the night at the child house, but was surprised to hear she was treated very well. Chris loses it after hearing Julian the child had been taking care of her, and the brother and father only grow further in disbelief upon hearing Elise is actually friends with Julian now, all while Elise snacks on the sweets Julian gave to her. Wow, what a sweet ending to this episode. It's another day, and Randall has returned to serve Linden, but he's more than able to work within the castle with no problem. However, Randall has been noticing Linden has been going into town doing inspections more frequently lately, making Linden look away, slightly embarrassed at what he might be doing. Randall tells him it isn't good for him to go into disguise so often, as it could strain both Linden's body and the artifact he possesses. And upon hearing Randall saying he was able to heal all thanks to Elise has been well, but when learning she's been sick, Linden shouts, asking for more details. Something unusual for their crown prince. We turn to the Clorance estate, and she's decided to live her life as a doctor. I guess her desires are real, because even on her day off, she accidentally wanders to Teresa Hospital, where even Hans is questioning what she's doing here. After waving her, he came to see her. This surprises Elise, but Ron tells her he hoped to repay his debt for helping him today. Strawberry cake, mango pudding, banana tart, he'll buy anything she likes. And this makes Elise smile. The two sit in the carriage together, and on the way to a luxurious cafe, Elise notes that Ron isn't very talkative, quite beautiful, making it feel strange as this atmosphere feels familiar to her. Inside the high-end Café La, the two enjoy a splendor of desserts with special strawberry tea. Ron tells her to enjoy as much as she wants, which makes Elise laugh a little nervously, because surely he isn't being serious, right? Wink wink. On Elise's first bite of the treats, she's completely elated. However, Linden gets a serious look on his face, thinking he needs to give her more. He must find out what else she likes. Who else can he ask? Len is useless. Oh, maybe Chris. Linden heard Chris is an official in the administrative bureau. This makes Linden ponder what excuse he can use to get to talk to him. The two don't normally interact. With all these puzzling thoughts, she stares at him, noticing he seems deep in thought. Afterwards, the two walk to town, with Elise exclaiming Café La's strawberry tart to be the most delicious tart she's ever eaten. She tells Ron that if he ate one, she'd be certain it'd satisfy his taste. So he smoothly replies, "Being able to see that face of yours satisfies me well enough." Ooh. She stops suddenly, and when he asks what's wrong, she tells him it's nothing, all while repeating to herself over and over, "It's gratitude. He treated me out of gratitude. There's no deeper meaning." She then spots a poster for a play, but nothing is stopping this man from giving this woman everything. He tells her he wants to see this play, and she responds, "Really?" Making him reply back, "More precisely, I want to watch it with you." Carbon monoxide poisoning. As the other spectators come out, Elise beckons them to get low and to try not to breathe in the smoke. The noblemen holler back, saying, Who is she to give them orders? They believe with the fire having started downstairs, there's no way it'd reach up here, and that they just need to wait for rescue, as he'll help the boy and follow after. If there's a life he can save, he'll do everything he can. A heavy piece of wood. The people crowd around Elise, hoping to chat and gain her favor, having heard she also used to do volunteer work at a hospital. The people are truly banking that she'll be a wise crown princess, but she sighs, having to deal with all these formalities. She spots the Emperor and remembers when he asked her to put an end to their wager. She knows if things, and that if his blood pressure drops or there's any change in his state of consciousness, to contact her right away. Elise noticed he didn't look well earlier, but diabetes isn't the sort of disease that causes a sudden heart attack. What could have caused this? In the palace meeting room, a man opens with regards to the failed attempt of the Emperor's poisoning. However, Elise's father slams the table saying there's no proof of poison. But they are having a hard time believing that it would be his chronic illness due to the clutching of his chest and coughing of blood, with half of the room believing Linden had something to do with it. But reports from Lady Elise came back with poison to be also unlikely. However, Mikhail's nobles don't trust her, as she's Crown Prince Linden's fiancée and part of the King faction. They claim her findings are affected by her own self-interest, even slams Linden will lose his standing as Crown Prince. He brings up that according to law, charges of murder and attempted murder cannot be pursued based on circumstantial evidence alone. If the Crown Prince is to be accused of a crime, there must be clear evidence. Then, Mikhail tells them all to silence. With the Emperor out of commission and Linden currently in custody, the ultimate judicial power is currently held by Prince Mikhail. He agrees that it would be wrong to persecute his Marquis Amsel already arranged for a newspaper to publish an article. Now they only need to spread rumors about this amongst the commoners, that Crown Prince Linden poisoned the Emperor. Gossip is terrifying. Even without proof, rumors beget more rumors, and they begin to feel like the truth. Their goal is to bring public opinion to Prince Mikhail's faction. At the Clorance residence, the King's faction discusses how the whole meeting was clearly planned. It's clear Linden has no reason to assassinate the Emperor. He's already Crown Prince. Right now, he's currently being held at the Hundreds House, treated as a criminal. They're worried that with no cause found, Mikhail's noble faction will succeed. The only thing they can bet on is Lady Elise. Back at the hospital, Dr. Graham reads the Emperor's systolic pressure at 85 and diastolic pressure at 40. It's gotten better, but still low. Elise still contemplates on the cause, knowing not many illnesses can cause shock like this, and if there was, it would be an illness she'd already know of. She considered the idea that the noble faction was framing Prince Linden by using poison, but she doesn't believe Mill would ever use such craven methods. But even then, there have been no changes in the Emperor's body that indicate poison, and in the examination of his heart and x-rays of his lungs, there were no abnormalities. This isn't a matter of her lacking technical ability. There must be something she's overlooking. Dr. Graham tells her she shouldn't continue like this. She hasn't slept at all since yesterday or eaten much either. He warns her that even when her passion burned at its hottest, she always made logical, calm decisions and provided accurate, appropriate treatments. But right now, she's different. Not maintaining her health in a panicked state, can she truly see her patient? The Emperor is stable at the moment. Graham is here and so is Viscount Ben. With them being capable enough to handle it, he recommends Elise go outside and get some fresh air. Outside, Elise sits in disappointment that she so arrogantly declared herself to become a doctor no matter what, and yet can't even figure out how to save the life of someone so dear to her. A boy outside begins throwing news flyers, and Elise stares in horror with the paper framing Linden for the Emperor's poisoning. Over at the Hundreds House, Linden sits depressed, concerned for his father, but he's visited by Elise. He asks how his father's condition is, only to hear he's still not very good, with Elise trembling before him. Linden tries to comfort her, acknowledging that they're all doing everything they can. He begins to fall, however. He feels it's pathetic how he has absolutely no power right now. Back in his most traumatic time, and even now, he begins crying as he feels so pathetic. Elise goes to him, telling Linden his father will get better, and that she'll make sure of it. As she leaves, she considers looking into each possible cause one at a time, only to be stopped by a guard. The guard mentions the Emperor has fallen into severe shock again, and they'll get a carriage for her. However, the noblemen from Mikhail's faction appear, ready to end her life because they cannot let her near the Emperor. As they swing, she narrowly dodges and makes a run for it. She can't let them find her. Otherwise, what was coming back and living as Elise all for? She has to save Minchester. Unfortunately, one of them finds her and brings a blade down towards her end. But luckily, she's saved by Mikhail? It looks like he overheard his side of the faction talking and had a bad feeling, so he decided to follow Elise. Mikhail then disarms the noble. The two nobles plead to Mikhail for mercy as they were taking action for the noble's faction. They're okay with being the only two who have dirt on their hands, still implying Elise has to die. However, Mikhail guarantees if anyone harms Elise, they will be punished. Then suddenly, the men the two nobles hired attempt to attack because they want their reward. But Mikhail easily dispatches and pierces the men, taking them out, causing the two nobles to run away. Mikhail goes to console Elise, but she still tells him she's fine as she must go to the Emperor right away, surprising Mikhail with the strength of her resolve. Mikhail is a good guy. He genuinely wants Elise to save his father. Elise makes it to Minchester to hear he's not doing so well. She hears no problems with his lungs, but he's still in shock. They have to discover the cause soon, otherwise Minchester will die. She remembers back at the celebration, the Emperor had quite a bit of alcohol, but there were no illnesses she could think of that would cause this. However, it comes to her. With all hope lost, Dr. Graham and Viscount Ben recommend bringing in Linden and Mikhail to see their father one last time. Elise does agree to have them come and to make preparations for the surgery as well. Linden learns his father is in critical condition. However, Elise determines a method for saving his life. The Emperor was sitting for the whole 4 hours of the awards ceremony. That's in spite of the chronic illness he suffers from. Afterwards, he coughed up blood, had chest pains, fell into shock, and developed labored breathing. So what if a blood clot has formed in the artery of his lungs? There's a chance this is a pulmonary embolism. With no way to test in this era, they'll have to open up the chest, the arteries, and the heart itself with a scalpel to remove the clot. They could still be wrong, but Linden gives the word for them to perform the surgery regardless. He trusts Elise with the only possible way to save his father. In the surgery room, Elise cuts through Minchester's sternum with perfect precision. She finds the blood clot, determining that because of it sitting in the pulmonary artery, Minchester wasn't able to recover from his shock. But then, she also finds something else peculiar, a lymph gland mass. She wonders if this could be the cause of Minchester's illness. Losing weight, reduced energy, and this pulmonary embolism, these are all complications seen with lymphoma. With the lymph gland mass removed, everyone is in tears knowing this should relieve the Emperor of all his symptoms. After washing up, Elise sees Mikhail leaving. She knows the rivalry between Linden's and Mikhail's factions will be unchanged, but she hopes one day the two brothers can laugh and stand together. Back in the waiting room, everyone cheers, relieved that Minchester has been saved. However, Elise isn't done yet. Even without sleeping, she still has to head to her medical exam testing site. Outside, Elise is surprised to see Linden in front of a carriage. He tells her to get in because he's going to escort her. As they ride, Elise sits blushing across from him, but knowing she just saved his father, Linden thanks her from the bottom of his heart. With Elise heading off to her exam, Linden remembers her telling him she'll become a doctor no matter what it takes, because she wants to save as many lives as possible. Before she leaves, Linden stops her to say, "Back then, I thought our paths ran counter to each other, but even if we walk different paths, I hope that one day they will cross again." She blushes, asking what he means. So he replies that after finishing her test, they should go to Cafe La and have a strawberry tart. Thinking of Lord Ron, it comes to her. She heard that the royal family has a tool that allows them to change their appearance. She wonders if Linden is Ron, but with the bell for the exam tolling, she has no time. Elise kinda stands out in this exam room. In the meeting room for medical exam grading, all the doctors marvel over one student who scored a 98%. This particular student missed 2 points on treating pneumonia and a cold, which should have been the easiest. However, their handwriting was so illegible they had to dock points. Viscount Ben is excited though, knowing this doctor will go down in history, changing the status quo of their empire's medical world. The Emperor wakes up, learning from Bent that Elise passed the exams with the highest score in history. How much more could she surprise him? Elise then enters and takes Minchester out on a walk. There, the two talk about her exam results. They make a stop and Minchester asks if she has anything she regrets in life. because he himself has and was punished greatly for them. Elise shares his sentiment, remembering her first life losing everything. She recognizes that everyone makes mistakes, but if one truly regrets and chooses to move forward in spite of them, that's enough. Minchester finds her thoughts commendable and is ready to concede on their wager. However, she tells him their wager was for her to prove her work as a doctor is more valuable than her existence as an empress. They agreed she needed to prove herself before she comes of age, so the result of their wager haven't been decided yet. Elise de Clorance continues to live in this world as a doctor and spending time with Linden. She wants to protect those she loves from tragic fates and save as many lives as she possibly can. Alright, that was pretty good. I mean, if they wanted to continue the Elise x Linden route, I wish we could have gotten to see them more together in his actual form. But overall, this anime ended fine. Subscribe for more content. Also, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.